Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm Jacqueline Fernandez. Several law enforcement agencies serving search warrants around the metro, focusing on hotels, salons, and homes across Bellevue and Omaha. First Alert 6, Philip Katafamo is following their operations and has more tonight.
An investigation that took years now coming to a close.
Approximately 4 years ago, law enforcement became aware of rampant criminality occurring in many of these locations, at these hotels we hit today.
Tuesday, federal, state, and local law enforcement served search warrants at 14 businesses, including 4 hotels or motels and brow and lash salons in many locations. The FBI says the public issued complaints about issues going on at one or more hotels.
Several concerned citizens made calls to human trafficking hotlines in this case about child workers and sex trafficking occurring at some of these hotels. So we commend those members of our community who stood up, who took a stand to help shine a light on these absolutely horrific crimes.
Conditions inside and around the hotels described as horrific.
Overdoses were a common problem. At least one hotel had to store Narcan at the front desk. One witness described a stairwell full of needles. Other witnesses described open and notorious drug dealing in the parking lots.
Employees also described to authorities the nightmare they worked in.
They worked there but received no actual pay, and in fact, we're often told they owed money for rent. And in order to pay that rent, employees were solicited for sex acts or solicited to steal property, such as retail items like cologne, electronics, clothes, landscaping supplies.
A total of 5 suspects were arrested in connection to alleged crimes, including sex, drug, and labor trafficking, money laundering, among related charges. 4 other suspects were taken into custody on outstanding warrants. Money and jewelry taken at the scene.
We've seized over $500,000 in cash, approximately $65,000 worth of jewelry, and that's just a partial count. And these searches are still ongoing.
All told, 10 minors and 17 adults were rescued during this operation. Many of the young victims forced to work when they should have been in school. In Omaha, I'm Philip Katafamo, First Alert 6.
All right, Philip, thanks for that update tonight. Meantime, the FBI thanked those who voiced their concerns about conditions at these establishments. They ask anyone with more information to also reach out. Well, one of the locations investigated today has been targeting for trafficking before. Back in January, we told you about 6 arrests in connection to a child trafficking operation at the motel near 13th and I-80. Court documents say police found a 15-year-old girl and a 16-year-old girl being sold for sex. Those girls were taken to Project Harmony, where they shared that they were brought to Omaha from Denver. First Alert 6 spoke with Project Harmony today about the work they do to help victims in these awful situations.
We have 12-year-olds. I would say 12 right now is the youngest. We have several victims that are 12. So I do see a trend of this happening at younger and younger ages. And I think a lot of it is just those vulnerabilities that children experience within their home or within the system.
Project Harmony works closely with law enforcement in child sex trafficking cases. They tell us last year, Project Harmony served more than 330 minors. They say 30 arrests and 21 convictions were made involving sex trafficking.